Welcome to episode 20 of the Family Podcast Network, helping you work with your tough kids and even those that aren't. Coming at you from Tuscola, Texas, the headquarters of the Family Podcast Network. I'm your host, Trey Gibson. Guys, fantastic topic for today that we're going to go over. I'm going to do my dangdest to keep this one as short and as quick as possible. This one is weighty, it is heavy, and I want to make sure that we try to keep it as limited as possible. So much so that when I did my show notes for today, I deliberately put it together so that way I would only have one page of show notes, which is a very unusual thing for me. So we're going to make it quick and we're going to make it fast. Before we get started on that, guys, the topic for today is going to be how do we teach our kids to think? We have a propensity to see parenting and even public education as being something that is about us giving them knowledge and information. And it is very much about those things. Parenting very much so is about giving our kids knowledge and information. However, on the flip side to that, I believe that it is much more important to be able to teach our kids how to think by themselves, to think without the use of our brains as parents. And we're going to talk a little bit about that today. Before we do that, let's get into a little bit of housekeeping for today. As always, guys, I consider you guys, please consider jumping over, share me on Facebook, retweet me over to Twitter, follow me on Twitter. Also consider signing up for this, signing up for FPN and Facebook and Twitter as well. You can like me on both of those, as well as iTunes and Stitcher. Remember, iTunes helps you put it on any of your Apple devices. Stitcher will help you put these podcasts on any of your Android devices. Also, guys, if you guys are into RSS streams, I've got a link over on the right side. This browser bar over here, you can check out my RSS feed. Also, check out the blog or the forum. Also, guys, up in this top browser bar up here, I've added a books list, and on that is just a foundation of some basic things that I would like for you guys to read in terms of supplemental stuff that's really good when it comes to this parenting stuff. Some of these books you may look at and be like, Trey, this isn't about parenting. I know. However, the concepts in them are spot on. For instance, you take the 5 Love Languages by Gary Chapman. That one is fantastic. Basic premise behind the book is that we each send and receive the way we tell somebody we care about them in different ways. For instance, the way I do it is by telling, saying, and affection by like hugging and stuff. My wife does it by doing what's called acts of service, right? Where it's like she does things for me, right? So her making a lunch for me, or her having dinner prepped for me, or even cleaning the house is her way of saying, look, I do this because I care about you. Right, so if you have two people operating on the same principle, two people that love and care about each other, but they're operating on different wavelengths, right? They're sending it in different ways. It can create problems. Why is this a parenting issue? Because we can do that with our kids as well. So highly recommend, get on there and read those books that are on my book list. You can get them through Amazon on your Kindle and etc. devices. So get on there and check those out. I highly recommend it. Also, guys, consider checking out my blog and forum as well. This is just a place where you guys can get grounded in with each other. Consider membership with us. Anytime we get a member that comes in here, a level 0 membership is completely free. That just is completely free. It gives you access to the sites. You can get that. That's no problem, and then you'll have access to certain sites. 1 through 4 are pay sites. All that does is, guys, if you feel like you're getting 60 cents a day from this podcast, which is actually, I need to refigure that math because now that I'm giving you guys more podcasts per week, it's actually going to be less than that. But if you think that at least you're getting 60 cents or more out of this podcast, consider donating. What it does is it helps me expand this business and branch it out and get bigger. For the first few years of this, what we're going to be doing is putting all money back into increasing what we can do, increasing what we can get you guys, and making this a better experience for you guys when you come to FPN. So consider those things. Also, there's a contact us form on there. If you want to get on and ask us some questions, feel free to get on there. And then also, if you know somebody who might be a good guest, feel free to get up there and link them over to this website, and they can fill out that form up there and possibly get on FPN for some information. So now that we've got some of that, let me go to another second part of my housekeeping, and then we're going to get this bad boy started. It was brought to my attention today, as a matter of fact, that episode 19 had some desyncing or delacing. It means the video and the audio were not completely spot on, and so you could. It looked kind of like I went and rehearsed it. It looks like I'm speaking like in an old Chinese movie. So it'd be like, it looks like my lips are off with what I'm saying. So anyway, I've contacted YouTube. I've visited around with some folks about the issue. Sounds like the issue is when I'm uploading it, I am using my I'm actually using my landlord's internet connection through Wi-Fi with their permission, incidentally. And so anyway, it just is slower. So we're going to look for some new ways to upload video from this point on to try to make it easier on me, and then also get it up there to where it's not delacing for you guys as well. So we'll get that squared away. Thank you guys for your patience. If ever you guys have a problem with that, feel free to jump up right above. I always put the MP3 podcast in there. That's actually what loads it up to iTunes for me, so you guys can get it as an iPod through iTunes as well. So feel free to click on that link above the video if it's bothering you, but we'll see if we can get that squared away. So let's talk today. Teaching our kids how to think rather than just giving them the information, right? A lot of this bursts out of a kind of a principle that my wife and I have. The principle goes like this. We try to let our kids figure out their problems when they have them. So, and when we say problems, we're talking about simple kid problems, right? So the other day, my daughter Anna walked up and said, "Daddy, how do you spell ant?" So the first thing that my wife and I ask her whenever we get asked questions like that is, how do you spell ant? We always turn it back around and require them to think. Because here's the issue. This is my daughter. This is me for all that matter. If somebody, she walks up and says, "How do you spell ant, Dad?" And I look at her and I say, "Well, which one?" She goes, "Like the crawly one." "Oh, okay. That's A-N-T. Okay, she'll go A-N-T, A-N-T, and she'll walk off and she'll remember that. But guess what will happen within an hour? In most cases with my daughter, by the time she gets back to me, "Dad, I spell ant again." She'll forget that. And I think for a lot of us, that's human nature. If you ever study long-term versus short-term memory effect, it's amazing how that works. But a lot of times, if you don't rehearse that information long enough, struggle and work for that, then what happens is it doesn't get transferred from that part of the brain that does short-term memory over into the long-term memory or the cortex. I can't remember what it is. It's been years since I've studied that. I did a paper on it years ago, but the bottom line is those don't get transferred. And so if I just tell my daughter it's A-N-T, she's walked up, she's more than likely going to forget. However, what we do is, "Dad, how do you spell ant?" What we say is, "This will tell me how you spell ant." And she may struggle and she may kind of flip around on it, and then but she'll almost always get it. So that's what we're talking about today. There's an old Chinese proverb that says, "Give a man a fish and he has a meal for a day. But if you teach a man to fish, he has meals for a lifetime." Now, forgive the cliche nature of any of this and using this particular example, but I think it really fits. We can give our kids the information by thinking, by knowing what we know. However, if we can teach a kid to think these things out, I think we'd be surprised at how often they can figure this out. We ran into it the other day with my son. My kids had been outside playing all day. And they came in, they were dirty, they were filthy, and they just had dirt all over them and grass in their hair, which isn't a big deal. And I was getting ready to sit down to eat, and it was going to have ketchup involved, so I thought, this is going to be a shower afterwards type meal. So I thought, they'll be fine, a little dirt on them. Yeah, just, make them, eat a little dirt, kid, makes you feel better. I'm just kidding. But my son came in, I was in the middle of making the bed, and my son came in and said, "Dad, can I crawl on your bed?" So they're dirty and they're filthy. And so my thought is no. So I say, "No, son, you can't." And he looks at me and he says, "But Dad, why?" And so, instant reaction, what do I want to do? I want to answer. I want to say, "Well, son, it's because..." But I stopped myself and I said, "Tell me why, son." And he sat there and he goes, "Because you don't want me to?" I said, "Yes, that's true. Yeah, absolutely. But why do I not want you to?" And he sat there for probably 5 seconds, and I thought, man, he kind of looked like a dog for, hearing a funny tone. "Oh," he kind of looked at me like that. And I thought, man, he's, I don't think we're going to get this one. And he finally goes, "Oh, you don't want me crawling on there because I'm going to be all dirty and it's going to get your bed dirty." That is exactly right. Another example ran into today, and that's kind of what prefaced me putting this as our podcast topic for today and teaching our kids to think. My daughter had her Elite Pad, and she was playing with it, and it ran out of batteries. She goes, "Dad, can we get some more?" And I picked up some more batteries, and I came and dropped them down. Well, the set of batteries that are in the Elite Pad are the exact same kind, brand, same package for the one that we're about to put in with the fresh batteries. Well, guess what they look like? They're completely identical. So I got them out, and I took one pile, and I took the old batteries out, and I set them in a pile very far over here to the left, right? Then I took another pile, and I set them very far over here on the right. And my daughter was looking back and forth between these two piles, and you could just, she fell into the, she goes, "Dad, why did you set those two piles like that?" And I started to want to answer, but I stopped. I said, "Okay, let's get her thinking. Tell me why, Anna." She sat there for a little bit, and she goes, I don't know." "Okay, all right, then keep thinking. Tell me why that is. You can answer this, babe." Because I don't know." Keep thinking just a little bit longer, sugar. And she sat there, and you know what? She didn't get it. So what I did was, this is at that point where I thought, now I'm ready to get moving. I'm ready to go ahead and put those batteries in so I could get back to work on the house. And I thought, well, I'll tell her. I thought, well, you know, let's give her one more option. So what I did was, I took one of the old batteries and one of the new batteries, and I sat them next to each other, and I said, now, take a look at these and tell me why it is. And she sat there, and you could just see that look in her eyes as they lit up. And she had a smile. And she goes, I know why, Daddy. And I said, tell me why, sugar. And she goes, it's because they match. And I was just like, yes, that's exactly right. So why, if they match, would I not want them together? She goes, because you'd get them confused. My daughter's 5. And she's putting these kinds of things together. However, I'll guarantee you, she wouldn't have put that together if she'd have said, Dad, why are you putting those piles over there? And I told her this and this. Maybe she would have remembered. Maybe later down the line, she'd been having the same problem with batteries or whatever else. She was getting them mixed up. And she would have remembered this conversation and she would have followed through on it. However, by doing it this way, I required and taught her, don't just be handed answers. Think. Think it out. Teaching our kids to think is so powerful, and it is so important. However, as parents, we have a tendency to just answer the kids' question whenever they give it to us. Dad, why is this way? Why is that this way? Why do we do these things? Why do we have to have this rule? But instead, stopping and just saying, I don't know. You tell me why. The reason, so why do parents do that? So like, you know, I've had to ask myself that. I've had parents sitting down with me on a professional level saying, Trey, why do I have a hard time doing that? The answer typically, I think, is this. And there are some more sinister answers, but in most cases, I think parents do it just because of this. We don't like to see our kids struggle. We want our kids to be successful. We want our kids to have things easy. We don't want our kids to have to go through difficult stuff because we're afraid of what's that going to do to them in their heart. Is that going to tear them down, I think, in most cases. Some parents are vindictive and mean. There are some of those parents that are out there, but I think the majority, they love their kids, and it's just more of an issue. We don't want to see them struggle. However, here's the problem that creates. It creates a dependence of kids on guess who? They begin to depend on us for their ability to get their answers. As a quick disclaimer, I may have to put this on pause. I hear a kid coughing in the background. They're in bed. It's late at night right now. And so I may have to pause you guys here in a minute to go check on a kid and make sure they're okay because they are coughing pretty hard. So as a disclaimer, but we'll continue to move on. The problem is that, again, it teaches kids to depend on us and depend on us to come up with answers. When in reality, that's one of the number one banes of adolescence. What were you thinking? You know? And a lot of kids just sit there and they look just blank-faced and they go, I don't know. I don't know if you've ever seen the Bill Cosby, but check out my blog. I put a Bill Cosby a stand-up comedy from a while back where he talks about parenting. I think it's the one that says, I don't know. When they say, I don't know. In reality, I actually believe those kids. Now, am I excusing their actions for being goofy or dumb or doing something that could potentially have hurt themselves or others? No, I am not saying that is okay. But in most cases, I think these teens who say, I don't know what I was thinking, there's truth to it. I don't think they have a clue of what they were doing. They've, in most cases, never been taught to stop and think for themselves. And that's our responsibility to do as a parent, is to teach our kids how to think. School's probably not going to do it for them. You find very few teachers. Had a teacher in high school for me named Mr. Cummings. He was a science teacher. He was an amazing teacher. Drove me flipping nuts. Because I'd say, hey, what's the answer to this? And you know what he'd say? Go look it up. Drove me nuts as a kid. I wasn't taught how to think as a kid. I had to figure that out on my own. And luckily we had teachers like that would do that. Why do teachers do that? It's not about them being jerks or turds. It took me a few years to realize that. It's not about them being jerks. It's about them teaching us how to find the answer. It's teaching them how to fish. And so your school is not going to do that because that's not what they're tasked to do. They're tasked to give your kids the info that they need to be able to pass all their tests. That's what their jobs are to do. So in most cases, the teacher that will take the time to teach your kid how to think is pretty rare. So we're more than likely going to have to be the ones that do it. Other people just aren't going to do it for us. We're going to have to step up to the plate. Why is this not teaching them to think for themselves such a problem? Because first off, let me be honest. It's the easier approach with our kids. Just tell them an answer, and now they've got the answer, and we can walk off. It is the easier approach, and trust me, I get it. I struggle with wanting to do it just like everybody else. The problem is that it creates more of a problem later, right? So we've got to step up to play with this. So why is it such a problem? Number one, biggest thing I see is it creates a victimized mindset in kids. They become so dependent on other people to think and make decisions for them that they will begin to see themselves as victims. Let me tell you, I've worked with some of these kids, and they can be a mess. I'm not trying to be hurtful or mean, but they have gotten so accustomed to blaming other people. And in a lot of ways, I get what they're saying. I've never been taught how to think, so I wasn't thinking when I did this, and they begin to blame others, which we hate, right? Especially as parents, we hate that. But in a lot of cases, these kids have never been taught how to, so it creates a victimized mindset. They begin to develop this mentality of there's nothing I can do. There's nothing I can do. You say, Trey, is this related to teaching them to think? Absolutely. Absolutely. One of the things that I always loved about iconic figures like Captain Kirk, whether you're thinking the old original series or if you're thinking this new series that came out, this new movie a while back, one of the things about him that they made a comment that he leapt before he looked, right? And so that lack of reservation, that trust and that confidence in yourself to be able to do that. A lot of kids are lacking that nowadays, and this is one of the best ways to do them, is to teach them to think, to never stop thinking. Because the minute that they give up on that beginning to think, the first thing they have to turn to is well, there's nothing I can do. There's nothing else that I can do. There is always one more thing that you can try. If you're not dead, there is always one more thing to try. And trust me, guys, that's a hard pill to swallow, even for myself. Often, these are the folks that will seek out others to make decisions for them. Right? Because they've always had mommy and daddy answering questions for them, and they've never really had to step up and make decisions and get information and think. Then what happens is they'll let other people do their thinking for them. And they'll let other people make decisions, and then they'll just follow. And the beautiful thing about this, it goes back to that victimized mindset. When it goes back to that, here's what will happen. Then, when there's a failure, because they don't trust in themselves to let other people make decisions. When there's a failure, they feel more self-assured because at least it wasn't my decision. It was theirs. So again, it's a very, very nasty place to be. It develops very low self-esteem. If y'all have listened to some of the very first podcasts on here, like episode 1, 2, and 3, we go over the core fundamentals of my belief systems with how this worked and why this works. And those operate like this. The more positive things that happen in a kid's life. Good job. Way to go. I'm proud of you. They tie their shoes for the first time. They bring home straight A's, right? The more positive things that kids have, how do they feel about themselves? They feel better, more positive, right? The better that kids feel about themselves, guess how they act? They act better. So this, helping kids teach them to think for themselves, helps build up that esteem for themselves. And that's another big thing. So remember that as well. And then last is, I'll often hear these kids frequently go back to, I don't know. I'll see that in my kids from time to time, because I still struggle sometimes with wanting to just answer the question and not teach them to think. A lot of times they'll say, Dad, what's the answer to this, blah, blah, blah. What do you think that is? I don't know. No, sweetie, I want you to think. What is that? I don't know. Baby, you know the answer to this. Just think for a second. And then they'll sit down and think, and then guess what? 9 times out of 10, I'd be willing to bet, they come up with the answer, and I'm just blown away at how intuitive it is. Just giving them that opportunity. So a lot of times kids will default to this, well, I don't know. Well, I don't know. Well, yeah, you might not know, but let's figure it out, right? It's very, very important. So guys, let's wrap it up on this. What are we to do as parents? I've kind of walked you guys through my formula. It's the formula that we use. Literally, we do this every day with our kids. They come up and they have a question. Dad, how do you spell ant? Tell me how you spell ant. Well, I don't know. So the first thing I always recommend is say, tell me why. So Dad, why do we have to flush the toilet? That's an easy answer. You knew that right in the middle of me saying that, right? But I don't know. Tell me why. Why do we do that, sugar? Because we're supposed to. Yeah, that's one answer, but tell me more. Tell me why we would do that. Because it keeps the house from getting stinky. Yes, very good. Good job thinking that out, right? So first off, have them tell you why. If they say I don't know, especially if they say I don't know quickly, tell me why, sugar. I want you to think. If they say I don't know quickly again, tell me why. Understand, sometimes kids just don't know. My daughter the other day came in and said, Daddy, why is the sky blue? First off, I went www.google.com. That was the first thing I did because I couldn't remember. But I went and looked it up, right? But my first question in my mouth was, well, I don't know. My daughter asked me what stellar cartography was the other day. And I was like, you know what? I am not going to ask her what do you think it is in this case. But, retrospectively, even thinking about it now, I wish I would have. Because I think she might have blown me away at what she might have been able to answer with. But, so number one, have them tell you why. If they won't give you an answer, have them keep thinking. Make them strain. Make them think. Make them work hard for that memory implantation. It is that struggle to remember and think that causes them to be able to remember better next time. So be remembering that. And then do what you need to do to help them find the answer without directly telling them. Take the battery example, for instance. Instead of just telling her, hey, these are this, instead I gave her those 2 batteries put together to make her look at them. And then that was all the key. That was the factor that she was missing to help put together and stitch together this whole idea. Once she realized that they are identical looking, then immediately my 5-year-old daughter wove those together and said, oh, it's because they match, Daddy. That's why. And you don't want to get them confused. Right. So do everything you can to help your kids have all the information that they can do to synthesize it, put it together, and make their idea on their own. Remember, we do not want kids being dependent on us to think. So, well, why, Trey? I'm smarter, I've been living longer, I have more experience. I'm not saying that we don't want our kids to take our advice. We sure as heck do. But what I'm saying is we don't want them to be dependent on our thinking. And why is that? Hopefully, if the course of events go the way that you and I probably want them to, we're going to die before our kids. Hopefully. When that happens, what happens? What are they going to do now? One of 2 things that I can think of off the top of my head. Number 1 is they're going to be left without a decision maker, or number 2, they're going to seek out another one who's going to do it just like you did. So we want our kids to be able to think for themselves. Remember, if you teach a kid to think, you won't have to work nearly as hard trying to fill them up with knowledge and information. They'll be able to do that themselves. As always, guys, I want to say thank you for joining us for episode 20. Man, 20. That is almost a month worth of podcasts that we've been kicking out now. I cannot tell you how excited I am about that. Episode 20. Thanks again for joining us today. As always, consider sharing us on Facebook and Twitter. Feel free to log in to or sign yourself up to the newsletter. That'll give you instant email access to what's going on, any new updates, etc. that's going to be going on with FPN. And then also consider signing up for the site as well. Blog and forum are always available. And then also feel free to click the contact me. That'll get information to me. Or you can email me at TreyGibson@thefamilypodcastnetwork.com. And that will also get you access to me. I don't have any secret email accounts. That'll get you guys directly to me. Well, guys, that's all for today. As always, remember, it is all about the relationship with your kids. That is the key to any of this stuff working. You guys have a good week, good day, and we will see you at our next podcast.